all the information that I share tonight is both from my experiences. So my background is I was a school nurse for a number of years in a high school. I've been a paediatric nurse and a paediatric nurse educator for a number of years. I'm a parent of 3 boys and a young girl, and I've sort of combined conferences, webinars, research, my experiences, my failures, other people's successes, all into this to sort of bring some sort of sense, I guess, to this really complex world that we're parenting in at the moment. So my goal is tonight is for everyone to hopefully go home with something in their toolbox that might help you in this journey. But it could be like a big 4-week course. So welcome any feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. Also just want to recognise if anyone has any special needs, or if there's anything that you need me to change throughout this or speak louder or whatever that looks like, please let us know. And yeah, help yourself to handouts. So this is me and my family just recently, or my grown-up children now. And so, yes, being a parent and understanding this journey has been a really big part of this passion that I have I have for this subject. But my passion, I think, really actually began when I was a school nurse in a high school. And I saw, and I still see in the programs that I run in the schools. So I run the puberty programs and a bit of sex education schools, vaping programs, lots of different anxiety programs in our schools, which if you've got kids at the schools, they've probably met me through them. And a lot of this work that I really feel passionate about comes from seeing the repercussions of not getting a lot of this information out there and not supporting parents to be able to work with this, especially in this world that we're living in now, which is quite different to the world we lived in. So I do want to just point out that everyone's here for different reasons, and everyone's got a really unique relationship and journey with their young person. So do just take what you need from it. Some parts won't resonate with you. So safe space. I'll try to keep my language gender neutral throughout the talk. But I also want to say that I'm not a perfect parent, but I'm just in a very privileged position to be here to be able to share this knowledge. And like I said before, just we'll keep questions to the end, so that saves you having to be on camera, and it also just helps it to flow a little bit more. So if we can save them to the end, it'd be good. All right, so this is what we're going to cover tonight. So like I said, the information's coming from lots of different experts, lots of different experiences, a bit of a hodgepodge of things. What I do when I do these talks is I talk to and I interview, for want of a better word, young people and teenagers. And throughout it, I have put in there what they want me to be talking to parents about. And it's incredibly useful, that information. So the first part of the talk will be just an overview on emotions and what's really unique with teenagers. And then the second part will be throwing in a few parenting strategies. So first of all, I'm going to hit you with some hard statistics. So this is what's happening out there with our young people. Half of all mental health conditions start by the age of 14, and these are the ones that are, diagnosed, not the undiagnosed ones that a lot of people are working with. 40% of teenagers are diagnosed with a mental health issue in our time right now. And I would say a lot of people are in the process of getting diagnosed as well. 1 in 5 females and 1 in 8 males suffer depression before the age of 18. And suicide is the leading cause of death among Australians between 15 and 24. So they're pretty stark statistics. Our depression in our young people has doubled in the last 6 years, and it's now deemed Australia's biggest health concern in our young people, and also seen as the leading cause of illness and disability among adolescents globally. So it's big. So individuals who identify as gender diverse are 3 times as likely to also experience a mental health problem. Anxiety is the most common disorder among females, and ADHD is the most common issue rising in boys. And even though it's not a mental health disorder, it does add a huge amount to this talk we're talking about tonight with emotions and being able to regulate emotions. So the upshot of this is really our teens are struggling out there in the world, and therefore we are also struggling to be working with our teens. And if you or your teenager are struggling, you're obviously not alone. So good on you for that. So I'm going to go through these more throughout the talk, but this is what's going on with our young people. So not a lot has changed in the emotional, I guess, landscape of young people. So big feelings haven't changed. If you look back to your own childhoods, you can probably completely remember those massive, massive emotions that everything was amplified. So that part hasn't changed. That's how we grew up as well. But what has changed with our young people is the external things that are going on in their life. The internal world hasn't changed essentially, but the external world is actually changing what's happening in their hearts and their minds. So there's one thing that I want to share with you tonight, which will kind of helps to explain a huge amount of this. And this is this model of the brain that I guess it's a Dan Siegel model, and there's a handout up the back with this. And this is kind of, if we can imagine this is what's going on with a young person's brain. So if we can imagine this is a brain and this is our frontal lobe and where all our logical rational thinking comes from. Underneath that, we have the limbic system or the amygdala, which is where all our feelings come from. With a young person's brain, what is happening is this part here, the logic, it's like it's a tree that needs pruning and it's been completely pruned back. So a young person's brain is open to exploring new identities, new ways of thinking, but actually has no logic. So it's sort of like it's pruned back and that logic's gone. It's like it's got a sort of a flag in there saying that's under construction up until the mid-20s. But that's one massive change. But underneath that, the emotional center of a young person, it is on fire. It is basically getting all these new hormones fed into it that are making it sort of fire off. On top of that, it's getting all these brand new emotions that a young person's never experienced before fed into this, and they're trying to navigate those new emotions. So if you think about a young person, they might love their parents, but they're suddenly experiencing crushes and love in a really, really different landscape. And this poor amygdala is trying to navigate that emotion with no logic. So every single brand, every single emotion it's experiencing it's experiencing it without the logic to attach to it. So that's what we're working with until our mid-20s. This is sort of redeveloping itself. Has anyone seen Inside Out 2? So that's what it explains. So that's what's happening. So the crazy thing with it all is we've got these brand new emotions, brand new hormones, all this stuff being fed into this with no logic to help them navigate that new landscape. On top of that, the identity part. So the brain is sort of scrambling to try and work out who they are in this world. So they're trying to work it out. And that's why they experiment with how they look, how they feel, how they act, what friendship groups they like. They're just trying to work all of this out. So they're experimenting with their identity. Same time as all that's happening, they're discovering this new drug, for want of a better word, called dopamine. So the brain, it's the happy drug, which we all seek out. So as soon as this amygdala discovers what it likes in the emotional sense, it will seek it. And the brain has clicked on now to go, aha, I like that. So I'm going to keep seeking that out. So like you think about with chocolate, if you think chocolate, you want chocolate. This is the dopamine that it already releases in our brain. So this is happening here, and the brain's discovering this new drug. The weird thing in amongst all of this is as this logic separates, it is the same time that we're giving our young people more independence and we're giving them access to social media and screens. And that's all being fed into this poor little brain that's just trying to work it all out. So have a think about all the outside influences that come into a young person's brain. You think about, movies, what message it's giving them, music, the lyrics in music, the posters, the internet, what they're hearing at school, all that's being fed into this emotional part of the brain. So I always think about this. I always laugh at all three of my sons have done the same. And I don't know if you can resonate with this, but in the morning I'll get up and there's only one cereal. They've always said, I say, what cereal do you want? We'll put one in the cupboard. The Wheat Bix sits in the cupboard, yet my young My young teenage will all stand there in the morning and just stand and stare at the cupboard. And it's kind of like, mate, there's one choice. And they're like, yeah, good. And you're like, do you need me to help you with that? So they just can't even connect those sort of, especially early in the morning. So I always have a good giggle at that and say, do you just need to borrow my brain for a little bit? And they're like, yeah, be good. I'm like, good. I'll get the cereal out for you. So you kind of just hold them in that space sometimes. So, I mean, you can have a laugh at it. So, yeah, that's what's going on. We've got big emotions, not a lot of logic. That's our number one big thing that we work. Other things. So this slide here this is sort of showing us that a teenager's brain is ruled by these chemicals. So we've got love, rebellion, self-image, ego, all big because they're all emotion related. And then squashed onto the outside of that, we've got things like the memory, so the chores, the communication skills, and all those other little things just get a little bit squashed in amongst their brain in these years. So they've got heightened responses to everything, and they're super sensitive. This logical brain's just trying to work itself out. What we've got on the other side here is these chemicals that the brain is sort of working with. So they've got lots of adrenaline, and that often makes them ratty and erratic. They've got lots of cortisol, which is the hormone that's released as a stress hormone. So they're sort of in this constant sort of fright, flight, freeze mode, makes them a bit edgy. And the bad news, I guess, with that is that unfortunately, screens and gaming and phones make our brains release both dopamine and cortisol on top of what we're already releasing sort of at the same time. So we've got that going on, but at the same time, we've not got much and we want more of the dopamine, which is the feel-good drug. So like I said before, they'll seek that, which we all do. We seek that wherever we can. Oxytocin, which is the love hormone, but that doesn't necessarily mean love. That can mean, from hug, from touch, from feeling connected to somebody. And the serotonin, which is the most powerful antidepressant known to humans, which is increased by exercise, getting feedback, humor, social interactions. So we've got this sort of chemical balance that we're trying to create in our young person's brain. So one parenting question that I would always ask when I might have a ratty child or one with attitude is, what are we missing? What do we need more of? What have we got too much of? What do I need to help to replace or get that balance right? That's something just to have a think about. The neurodivergent brain may be quite different again, but each neurodivergent brain is unique in itself as well. So the emotions can be more pronounced, the reactions to stimuli quite different, the way of processing emotions can be quite unique and different, and they may experience greater challenges with attention and mood swings. But it's important to recognise these differences, but at the same time, this overarching concept of emotions and working with our young people is quite similar in what I'm going to be talking about tonight, but we'd need to tweak it to each individual brain, I guess. So another really great concept, which I only learnt this in my adult years, and I just thought it was a really lovely, simple way of thinking about things, is that emotions never, ever stand alone. They're always connected to either a thought or a behaviour. And we are in this cycle. So if you think about this in a way that we have let's say a happy thought or a happy memory of something, our thought is we remember something, we then feel happy, and then our behaviour is we might smile or we might laugh. So that's a really simplistic view of looking at that one. An example of this when I was thinking about this was with my oldest child. Was he went through a phase and he was incredibly quiet, didn't want to participate in things, and was quite withdrawn. And I started to look at it with this example here, and I thought, okay, I'm only seeing the behaviour, and the behaviour is a teenager who is withdrawing. So I could concentrate on the behaviour and try and put all these things around that behaviour. But what I needed to do is start thinking about the other two and where was it best for me to intervene. So what I realised through lots of observation, lots of conversations and lots of sort of thinking around that was I realised that the more I watched him, the more I realised he wasn't feeling heard. He was sort of saying things and then, all his teenage mates would just be, they all talk over the top of each other. He wasn't feeling heard in that space. He's a very quiet speaker. And so his voice wasn't being heard. So his thinking was, everyone's talking over me. No one actually wants to hear me. And then the feeling that then ensued from that was, I'm not worth it. Nobody cares about me. So if nobody cares if I'm there, why be there? So you can see how you can actually play with that instead of just looking at the behaviour we're seeing. We look at the two things underneath. And then it was a matter for me as a mum to work out where am I most effective intervening in that to try and stop this cycle going on. So I had to try and work that out. So a young person often can't make these connections between the thoughts, the feelings, and the behaviours. They will only know how they're behaving sometimes. So it's often a mystery to both us and to the young person with this little cycle here. So it's one of the best parenting things that I have done since really learning about this is really stepping back and putting my detective hat on and trying to work out what was going on from their perspective in one of these and see if I could work out at least one and then go from there. So what's going on underneath the surface, like our little iceberg over here? What's going on under the behaviour, under the thought or under the feeling? And which part can I address? Which part can I hear the story of or see the story of? And where might I be able to break that cycle? So that analogy of the iceberg is very real with that, but it just sort of puts it into another sort of way of looking at it. A good concept to keep in our little parenting toolbox is the emotional regulation thermometer, because I think it's a really great visual tool, and there's some of these up the back there. But we all have our own emotional regulation thermometer. So ideally, what we all want is for our brains to have the emotional part of our brain connecting, talking to the logical part of our brain. When our brains are like that, we're happy, we're good, we know what's going on, and it's connecting to whatever's going on around us. That's our ideal. That's the green zone. So that's where we all ideally want to be in. Most of the time, due to life in general with adults and young people, we're living in the yellow zone, which is actually our brains a little bit like this. So when we're in the yellow zone, it is so much easier, or even the orange zone, which would be here, it's so much easier to get into the red zone. So we're much closer to those zones. So that's something just to keep in mind, that we're living in these, I guess, stressful times. We're living in that yellow zone now, I think, most of us. So this works for both us and our young people. And I always remember when I was a school nurse when this really resonated with me, when, a young person, I learned from being a school nurse that the kids, when they come home, are in a yellow zone or in a red zone. When we come home from work, we're in a yellow zone or an orange zone. So when we both all come home, at some stage, to make this work, one of us has got to get back to the green zone before things are going to work out. So think about after school and just leaving them to get back into this sort of green zone before we actually try and work with our young people, because one of you has to be in the green zone to make communication work. And the extreme would be when a young person might say, I hate you. That is them completely flipping the lid into the red zone. And then you feel angry because they've said, I hate you. So you flip your lid. And then we got two people with their lids completely flipped. And that's where the flip the lid analogy comes from, trying to work a situation out. So it's working out who's in the green zone, who do we need to get in the green zone to actually work with whatever we're working with. And I just really like these two sayings here, that when our young person's emotions are high, their language and their logic is low. So we've got to not be relying on either of those two things. So rationalising with them and reasoning with a young person is not going to be effective when we're in that zone. So it's asking yourself as a parent, I guess, is what do I need to do to either get them back in the green zone, and what zone am I in? And I really like that other saying I've got there, that you don't have control over their actions, but we always have control over our own reactions. But it's trying to get that control of them, which is the hard bit. So the other little one I wanted to show you before we get into the strategies is this emotional shutdown. So I think emotional shutdown is one of the most misunderstood reactions in our teenagers, especially young people with ADHD, because it often looks like rudeness. It often looks like I'm just not going to talk to you. It often looks like you're complete shutting down. So, but what it is the brain actually realizing it needs to shut down to survive. It goes into survival mode. It's overwhelmed. It's protecting itself. It's overloaded. So it can't take anything more. And we've got this tipping point, and that tipping point is different for everybody. So it's not a lack of caring. It's just everything's too much. And it's often a result of which we don't know where our tipping point is. We can cope with different things coming in all of the time. Like if you think about a daily Tetris in this sense, with this sort of worry stacking with a young person. So at home, they might be feeling everyone's trying to control them, or might feel a bit unheard, might feel a bit misunderstood, might be bored, might feel a bit disconnected from people at home. Then they go to school and they're feeling things are unfair. Someone might have yelled at them. So they might feel unheard again. They might feel judged. So we're getting all these emotions throwing in. So each one of them is adding to this sort of worry stacking, or this Tetris. And then they have their friends, and they might be, thinking, oh, I'm feeling a bit excluded, or I've got a bit of FOMO going on, or my friends don't really like me, or I'm not dressing the same as them. There's a lot of emotions throughout a day. And then you think, add a bit of media or social media on top of that, and then you've got a whole nother bunch of emotions. So when they come home, or they're at home, and then they suddenly lose it and might, slam that door, that's their body saying, I can't handle this feeling right now. It's just, I've just tipped over the edge. So it's like the nervous system sort of exit point. So when this happens, what we've got to do is resist that urge to chase them, learn to pause, not sort of going and knocking immediately, give their nervous system time to come back down, to regulate itself. And it might be when you go to that door and knock on that door, it might be not necessarily words that are needed. It might be even a note under the door or something, because that's not going to heighten it back again, because it's all in here, isn't it? So we can't tell where that tipping point is for anyone. And often you can all probably relate to this. We don't know where our own tipping point is. So these teenagers, without the logic attached to anything, their tipping point with all those things coming in is really hard to read. So it might be offering a snack. It might be putting something under the door. It might be just saying to them, hey, whenever you're ready, I'd love to talk about this, but if you don't, just seeing you calm is enough for me to say you're okay. So maybe not revisiting that, because that tipping point is not far away again. That makes sense. So it's kind of just thinking, I guess, in these ways, that this sort of Tetris, or this worry stacking, could be happening without us seeing or understanding what's going on. The other really important thing is to say that sometimes it's not something big, but it's really big to our young people, and they're interpreting it in a really different way to us. So what we've got to do is try and look at things through our young people's eyes and meet them sort of where they are. So the purpose of emotions, I like this saying, the purpose of emotions is to create motion. So the purpose of emotions is when someone acts out, they're wanting us to react. They need someone to react to that, to be able to hold that space for them. So I think a really good example of this is when we might say when a child's not ready to go to high school, for example. And from our adult perspective, we might go, oh, yeah, they're really scared because it's heaps bigger. Oh, yeah, their friends aren't going. We'll put our own straight away what we think the cause is. But it might be completely different for our young person. They might have heard 3 years ago that when you go to the high school, they flush your head down the loo. And that's still in their brain somewhere. They might be scared that there's scary teachers there. They might be scared of their height. They might be scared they're going to get pimples when they're there. Girls might be scared they're going to get their period. So Whereas us, we would just go, oh, that's okay. We'll just get that sorted out. Or don't worry about your height. But to them, are you okay? Oh, that's okay. um, so yeah, it might be something really, really little, but really big to them. It's like, anger is really about anger. It's about feeling powerless. It's about feeling misunderstood. It's about being overwhelmed or unseen. So it's looking at those triggers and what's triggering them from them. And they might not be able to pick this either. So I think that's another really big one. And that example of my son was one of them. It was just feeling unheard, and that triggered the behaviours. So, what are normal teenagers' emotions? So, when we look at normally, hopefully, we've got an appreciation of what's happening in their brains now. But emotions will rule their world, and their thoughts and the way that they see the world. That's just how teenagers work. Short-tempered is normal because they've got that really high adrenaline in there. Being ratty, unpredictable, again, can be normal. Someone once suggested to me a teenager's like having Uncle Jack come and live in the basement of your house one day, and you've got to accept Uncle Jack to come and live there. And you got to accept Uncle Jack's really crappy behaviour and swearing and carrying on, but it's Uncle Jack, and Uncle Jack's just like that. So we're going to deal with him. Sort of like that, having a teenage. Like, I'm just going to work with what I've got right now because of all those things going on. So another really great analogy that I heard about teenage brains that I liked was we consider their teenage brain to be like an untrained border collie, and we let that border collie out into a paddock of sheep. They got no idea what to do with the sheep. They're running around and they're trying to base everything on emotions and on instincts. The instincts are there, but they don't know what to do with them. And they've got no understanding of that impact on other people, or the sheep in this case. So that's kind of like a teenage brain sort of working. So, but they work well with a few directions and a few boundaries around that. And that's what the border collie would come into. So, yeah, it's kind of looking at not working with what we've got. So, hopefully that makes some sense of, teenagers' emotions and thus the behaviours that we're seeing. We often don't know what's going on in their world as much as we might think we do. We really don't know how they're interpreting what they're hearing, what they're seeing. And they don't know what's going on with us. That's kind of that picture I thought depicted that really well. So how on earth do we navigate these sort of alien creatures, and we're alien creatures to them? And yeah, how do we actually meet in the middle somewhere? That's the question I guess we've got to ask ourselves. So we'll look at a couple of just quick the big emotions before we get onto the parenting strategy. So I just wanted to touch on some of the big ones, the emotions of worry, anxiety, and depression, and with a few statistics up there. But what I do want to say with this is I go into the schools and run a program called Make Friends with Worry, which we do from prep up to grade 6. And what worries me sometimes is the number of young people who often will say, yeah, I've got anxiety. And I always say to them, so what makes you say you've got anxiety? And they'll be like, because I've been told I'm really anxious and I've got anxiety. And it's like, okay, were you worried about something once? And they went, yeah, I was really worried about it. And they'll tell me the story. And it's just that there's sort of this labeling comes really, really quickly. And then they're just sitting with that saying, that's what I am and that's who I am. So I think one of the most important things is to not label, just say you are worried about this or you're anxious about this situation right now. And yeah, it might be carrying on for a little while, but you haven't got anxiety unless we're going down that road of really looking into that further. So with all of these sort of statistics in here, just remembering that amygdala, that emotional center is the front and center stage in our teenagers' lives. Emotions are big, and that will make worry big, that will make sadness big, that will make these emotions big as well. So we want to support rather than label, I guess, is the first instance in that. But then I guess we've got to also ask ourselves, when do I need to look further into this? These are some of the times that you might start thinking, maybe I need to get this further looked at and maybe get some further support before labelling starts. So this is kind of, I guess, textbook in a way that you may, if they had 1, 2, 3 of these, you may start going, yeah, okay, let's get some help. But I also, as a pediatric nurse for many years, the number of times that I experienced, textbook diagnoses versus just a parent saying, they're just not right. I am worried this is just not them. Don't ever, ever dismiss that. I think maternal and paternal instincts are the best diagnosis. You know your children best. You know when something's just, not right. And don't ever let textbooks, I guess, override that if ever you are worried about your young person. They do give a bit of a 2-week with depression of saying if it's carrying on if it's been sitting there for 2 weeks, that's getting a little bit stuck. We might need some help with that. But also it may be something that we can work with before we're diagnosing things. So, and we also might be experiencing anxiety and depression, at the same time or whatever's going on. So have a look at the circumstances as well. So I just want to very touch on this because I think it's a really important topic to just sort of, I guess, dispel some myths. This was a really, really steep learning curve for me when I was a school nurse, when I was working with some young people who were experiencing some self-harm. So I just want to share with you a few conclusions that I came up with that. So it's really good to have a really good understanding. So non-suicidal self-injury is what we call it now. It's an umbrella term that refers to the actions that a person might take which may cause them harm. So it typically does happen in a lot of adolescents, but may include suicide attempts, may include non-suicidal self-injury, may include substance misuse, over or under eating, or just hurting themselves. So it's a very big umbrella term. And it's just really good to just realise that there's not one meaning with it and there's not one term that we use under that. It may not be a mental illness in itself, but it's very, very often a maladaptive coping strategy and a way that young people deal with emotions in different ways. So just be really careful of our own biases, our own thoughts or other people's biases and thoughts when it comes to non-suicidal self-injury. A very small number of people do injure themselves, but what help they need will be different in every situation. And as much as some people say it is to just, get attention, I agree with that. They all need attention, but the answer is not saying, they're just doing it for attention. They need attention to help them to work with their emotions. This is an extreme case of often young people not knowing what to do with their emotions. So concentrate on the emotion rather than the actions that are happening when it comes to this side of things. And this was a survey put out about why people may self-injure, and you can see there's a lot of different reasons for it. So I really love this analogy, and it was one of those ones that hit home for me working with young teenagers. So we've got a double-edged sword with this teenage brain that we're working with. It's got 2 important implications, this whole pruning of the brain. So first of all, when our young people's brains are like this, first of all, they are more easily harmed because they're in a bit of a changed state, a vulnerable state. But the good side of it is they're also more able to learn new ways of coping. They're really open to change, and it's an absolutely tremendous opportunity for change to actually be working with the brains. So if you think about our brains, and this will make sense in a minute. So when we have an emotion, let's say it's anger, we often all act the same way every time we have that emotion. And that's because our neural pathways in our brain go straight to that action. So, if it is to yell when we're angry, our neural pathways go straight to yelling. And that's our way of coping with that emotion. With a young person's brain, the beautiful thing is it's like there's a whole new layer of snow on their brain. So if you're thinking about this as from an adult perspective, from our perspective, if this was us in our brain, we've got an anger, we've got the slope. The slope's already been made. The neural pathway in our brain's already been formed. So we'll go down the same way every time. If we put the analogy to a snow-capped mountain, it's for teenagers, they've got this brand new layer of snow and there's no pathways on it. So by us working with them, with their emotions, we can help them to form really healthy pathways. So even if that, so let's say anger, even if that pathways, they've gone down that pathway on their ski slope a number of times and lashed out, for example, it's not deep, it's not embedded. They're much more pliable and able to change that pathway to another one that might be more healthier. Does that kind of make sense? So that's kind of how we're seeing a teenage brain. We've got a fresh layer of snow there and we can work with it a lot more easily than we can work with ourselves, basically. So it's a nice, refreshing way of going, okay, we got something to play with here. So I'm going to get on to the tips and tricks now with parenting, and hopefully you can find something with these, with that knowledge of how some of the things we might be able to do. And if you are, you have been trying different things and they're not working, maybe there's a new little lease of life, like this little picture over here. So, but see, this is like a bit of a party bag. There's lots of things here, and just take it, put in the party bag, like with the handouts, anything that might resonate with you, because some won't. But it's sometimes good just to review what you're doing, or sit there and go, yep, I'm doing all that, I'm good. And that's a really good outcome as well. But do remember that dealing with teenagers' emotions, I love this analogy, it's like a battleship that's come into a port. Have you ever seen those battleships that come into a wharf and they take hours to turn around to just get back out to sea? This is kind of like what we're doing working with teenagers' emotions. It's not a quick turnaround. It's going to be bit by bit by bit by bit, and pausing and working in that sense. So the what, when, and the how, what, when strategy is asking yourself, when we've got emotions going on, is saying, how long have these changes been happening? So it's you being the sleuth, you being the detective here. So remembering, though, that for the young person, if you're noticing something going on in a behaviour with emotions, they've probably been going on for much, much, much longer than what you've been seeing, what's been going on inside that young person. So that's the how. How long for them, how long for you, and how is that impacting on what's going around? Then the what. The watch is really watching, listening, looking at their words, looking at their actions, and do they help you to work out what's going on with that young person, thinking of that emotions, the behaviour, the feelings, and the thinking. So an example I can do with this strategy was one of my sons was giving me the tood, and lots of sullenness, lots of attitude to me. And I pointed it out to him one day and just said, do you realise, how you're coming across to me? And he just looked at me and was like, huh? And I think it's true. He actually didn't. You could see that as defiance, but I actually genuinely think he had no idea how his attitude was starting to impact on our relationship, the family's relationship, and my reactions to him. So I just thought he was being really purposely disrespectful. And then when he said that, I was like, okay, maybe he actually genuinely doesn't. So my how, what, when strategy was thinking, radio, I'm going to watch him from a whole bunch of different angles. I'm going to see what's going on in his life. And so what I did is little things like when he was doing soccer training, I got the dog and I walked the dog around and around and around the oval, and I just watched him interacting with his mates on the soccer field, and I listened to him. I was like, okay, that's one angle of him. That's only one angle of him, though. Then I watched his angle, which we often do. We only watch the angle of our kids in our homes, which is a completely different angle to what you'll see in all these other areas. Then I organised for him to have a whole bunch of mates over, and I wanted to watch him with a different bunch of mates, how he acted and reacted and was with them. And then I did parent-teacher interviews, a whole nother angle that I could see what he was like at school. And then I watched him with his siblings, watched him with his dad, all the different angles, and then tried to bring something together. And it was really interesting. So what I saw was he, again, just like my other son, Mates don't listen to each other. They're all in it for themselves. So he wasn't feeling heard with all his mates, but he was trying to, every time I saw him in each situation, he was trying to find his identity in each one, and he was acting differently. So with the boys on the soccer field, he was just like, trying to be all tough, and it wasn't working. And with his mates at home, he's trying to be the funny boy. And I was like, that wasn't working either. So he was literally just seeking his own identity and trying to see where it landed every time he did it. But that was exhausting. So I was the last straw. I was the Tetris. I was the one that broke the camel's back, so to speak. So when he was at home, he was not trying to be anything. So that's when it all came out. So it was kind of going, okay, if I can see that from all these different angles, I can respect that and I can just point it out to him, let him know it's not great, but I also don't want to point out to him, I've seen you trying to find your identity. That would be really crap if you don't let him know that you've seen it. But what I did was I then spent as much time as I could validating him for just the person he was. He was really good at maths. So I went on about the maths. I was like, hey, man, show me your maths homework. Oh, my God, how do you do that? I wouldn't know how to do that, blah, 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 blah. Tried to do the whole you are amazing at maths. I left chocolates on his bed every now and again just so he knew that there was someone who cared for him. I cooked his favourite meals. I just did lots of little things to validate who he was. I knew he was really good at playing Frisbee, so we went out and played Frisbee in the park so he could say, yeah, I'm good at stuff and this is who I am. And I just tried to get that dopamine up and that cortisol down. Did I did that wrong way? Yes, did that right way around. Yeah, so just bit by bit played with that because of what I was seeing. And little by little, just like the big ship in the harbour, we were slowly turning that around as he giving him time to search out his own identity and work out who he was. So it's that, yeah, this is a good strategy to just try and put all those bits together. And that was kind of my example of using that one, I guess. So, yeah, what lies beneath? Big one. This is from the mouth of a teen. I have this lovely little story when I asked a teenager and said, what is the best thing I can tell parents when I do these talks? And she told me this awesome story. She said, I was cooking for the family one night and I accidentally spilt all the hollandaise sauce. And I was on the floor. I was crying. I was having an absolute spock attack. And my family all came running in and were really, really going, it's okay, it's okay, okay. And they made the situation heaps worse. And she said it was just the most horrible moment because all they could concentrate on was the hollandaise sauce, that I'd ruined the hollandaise sauce. But she said it had nothing to do with the hollandaise sauce. It was my breaking point, and no one asked me how I was. And she said, can you get those parents to just say, it's not this, it's how are you in this situation? And I was crying when she was telling me. She said, no one asked how I was. They would just wanted to fix the problem of the hollandaise sauce. So my saying with that is every time I see her, it's like, it's not the hollandaise sauce, it's okay. And she's like, it's not this hollandaise sauce. So yeah, don't concentrate on whatever the issue is. Look at what the person's going through in that. And that was just her breaking point. And she was really upset. And we had a whole bunch of teenagers there listening, nodding their heads. So it wasn't just her. And what she said was nobody actually cared about how I felt about that. They wanted to fix it for me. So yeah, allowing those emotions, I think it's a really big one. And this is another one from the mouth of teens is, can you just let us be angry? Can you just let us be sad every now and again? Can you just let it all out? Because at home is the only place where we actually can in a safe place. So let us. And another group of people said to me, can you tell those parents to never say, oh, it's just a phase they're going through? And as soon as they said that, my mum said that about me all the time, and it is the most dismissive statement we can make. It probably is, but it doesn't matter. Just that's a very dismissive way of saying they're not really that emotional. So yeah, make space for that story. And then the other one is, don't fill problems with solutions. Was me wanting to pass that on. So I think this really helps us to do that. It's sort of just validating the feeling first and then saying, do you want me to go any further with this? So that's sort of from the mouth of teens, that one. One of the other parenting strategies is next time anyone sort of acts out or has any issues is stopping and doing the HALT theory. Now, I've added a few more onto this one. So the first one is, are we hungry? Is there something we need to just fill that person up, nourish them, and then address the problem? Angry, or I would also add into this anxious, and I would also ask, what do you need me to do right now? Hug you, be silent, leave you, what is it? So asking them what's needed in that to hold that space. The L, I would just see instead of lonely, I would definitely consider that. There's I can't remember the percentage, but a very large percentage of people, young teenagers, are feeling very lonely at the moment. But I would add to that, just listen. Are they not feeling heard? Are they feeling left out? Listen to what their story is with it. And then the T for tired, I would also say take a break. Maybe go and do something to get those chemicals back in balance first. So is it like, let's go for a walk and let's get those chemicals sorted out? Let's have a sleep. You want to sleep on this and come back to it. Have a think about that chemical imbalance that could be going on when someone's having big emotions, and what do we need to do to just reset that? That's another. So I know this one looks a little bit complex, but it's explore, explain, and empower. So it's stopping, asking what led up to this situation, what's underlying it, and stopping yourself from trying to solve the problem, like I just mentioned before. The little ear there is to listen with no judgment and just turning your comments off. I remember a teenager said to me, it's like, I'd like to have a sticker and I'd like to just put on my parents' head one day, like buttons to say mute. It's like, okay, that's not a bad idea. Just put the mute button on for a little bit and just listen. I just put don't be an ass, don't assume. So find out where they're coming from, not where you think you're coming from with it. The tick is the validating. So validate how they're feeling first before looking at what the problem is. So it sounds like this or it looks like this, are really good statements without comparing to what you might have felt before. Just it sounds like this. So because if you ever say, oh, yeah, you're really angry, aren't you? That might just set them off again. So it sounds like this or looks like this, softens that a little bit. And this gives you that connection. As soon as you validate, you'll get that I see you, and I see you and I hear you. Empathy, which is very different to sympathy, is the next one. So putting yourself in their shoes as opposed to feeling for them, which is much harder to do, the empathy rather than the sympathy. Having a look at what tools that you have got. Now, I'm going to go through some of these in a little while, so we'll leave that one. But look, what have you got in your toolbox to help them right now? Giving them some space. So for you to manage your emotions or them to manage their emotions, again, having a look at where you both are with this one. I always laugh at this one here, because when I was young, and it sounds really bad, but when I grew up, it was, I'm not going to say normal, but it was accepted. My mum had a copper stick. So it was a stick that was in the laundry. And whenever we pushed the limits, which I was very good at, my mum used to just look at us and we knew when we'd pushed it, and she'd just say, go and get the copper stick. And that's when you knew, you're like, oh, I've just pushed it too far, haven't I? But what I realized was, so the copper stick was in the laundry, which was just outside the house. So I used to go and look for the copper stick, but I would pretend I couldn't find the copper stick, and I would hide the copper stick in the laundry and then come back and say to Mum, I can't find the copper stick. And I could never work out why she got angrier then, because I was like, well, it's the copper stick. It's not me. She knew perfectly well I'd hidden the copper stick, right? But what that was doing, and Mum told me this years and years later, is she'd often then put the copper stick just on the table in front of us, and then we'd have a right royal. But what that was doing, unbeknown to even my mum, was giving her space. If I left the room, and the longer I left the room, it gave her space to go, what am I going to do here? How am I going to deal with this situation? And then I came back, and unfortunately I stuffed it up because I hid this copper stick and I made it worse. If I just come back with the copper stick and put it on the table, she'd probably already made her decision that, whatever she was going to do. So don't do the copper stick, but you can see the thing, put some space between things maybe. But yeah, I always thought my mum was quite clever in doing that. And then an invitation. So instead of just saying, okay, well, I think you need to do this, this, and this, it's saying things like, do you want to know what I think of this? So if you've got that yes, then what they're going to be doing is much, much more open to hearing what you've got to say. You got no, obviously, good, we're going to leave it right here. But put the invitation on the table before you offer the solutions, because then they're much more open to hearing them. And then break it down. So, for example, if you've got someone saying something like, oh, everyone hates me, then let's break that down. Let's see who everyone is. and then we'll break that down for you. And just think about how you might be able to break down each problem for them. So, yeah, that's another little kind of way of going through the other one I've got, and it's not a great slide, I'm sorry, but one really great tool that I have seen in action here is creating a young person creating their own individual solution. So when I was a school nurse, I used this sort of similar-ish thing. Is what I used to get the young people to do, especially the ones who had big anxiety or maybe were self-harming. I'd said get them when they're in a good space to write down all the things that just simply made them happy. Write down what they liked doing. And then when they got into a bad space at all, instead of having to think, because we often can't think, is they would then look at their list and go, what's available to me right now? Well, I'm feeling really anxious or I'm really overwhelmed. What might I choose right now? So I used to have a safe room in the little clinic that I had in this school, and I'd put colouring, I'd put yoga mats, I'd put meditations, I'd put bean bags, I'd put all of this stuff in there, and they would go in there and go, okay, which tool do you think you need right now? So it's empowering them and empowering them for future. So you're actually sort of giving them those tools to look at what they can do. And it also will increase those happy drugs when they go, I helped myself in this situation. I didn't have to be told what to do, so I can do that again. But it also gives them options. So if one doesn't work, try another one without having to think. So it's kind of like putting a list of things that they might do or could help them. This one here is like my mantra, I think, is learning, and it is one of the hardest skills. I think, oh God, I've done it again. Hardest skills in the world to learn is to listen, to understand, not respond. So this is the number one request of every talk I do. Every time I talk to a teenager is like, what do you want me to talk to parents about? This is it. And so the statistics that are out there are showing us that our young people aren't coming to us with problems. They're turning to the internet, because the internet can give an AI now will give them an instant answer to everything. Chat GPT even more so. So they're not coming to us. And when you think about it, they're often not coming to us because we are so predictably unpredictable. If you have a think about that, when you've got a young person come to you with something, they don't know what they're going to get with us. We're a bit of a loose cannon sometimes, because they don't know whether we're going to go fly off the handle. They don't know whether we're going to give empathy. They don't know whether we're going to just go blah, 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 blah and keep talking and really annoy them. So sometimes we're too big a risk to go to. And so how do we become more predictable to our young people? So when you think about it, when someone comes to us, and we do this with everybody, is we want to either share our story or we want to come to a solution for them. We want to give advice. We want to fix something, because they're our nearest and dearest little people. So we want to help. We want to give. So if we step back from that, and it is incredibly hard, this skill, is just listening with your heart, with your eyes and with your ears open. Often what you hear is what is underneath the story. What are the needs? What are the wants? What are the feelings beneath the words they're telling you? And if we do this, we then become more predictable, because they know we're just going to listen to them. And that makes us a much safer option to come to. And even if we get it wrong, they still feel heard and listened to. At least we've ticked one box. So this skill, I have been practicing this skill, and again, it's only recent, when I realised that, and have a think about this in your own homes, have a think about when I don't know if you've got teenagers that just go straight to their rooms. And if they ever come out of their rooms, what is one of the first things that we do when our teenagers come out of their rooms? We want to connect with them. We're desperate to connect. So what we do is we ask lots of questions, or we say, oh, have you done your homework? Or can you do this? Or we give them a job. Completely guilty of it. And so when they're in this beautiful safe space of their rooms, that is their safe, let me get myself unbeknown to them, this is bringing them back to this, they creep out, and then they just get us bombarding them with something. And even if it's nice talk, we're still unpredictable. And we give them a job like me. So I started this experiment a little while ago when my kids came out of their rooms, I was silent. I'm just silent. And I just wait and see what they do to fill that space. And it is actually amazing what they fill it with. Sometimes they just sit there. But don't make yourself completely silent that you're too busy, you're not talking to them, because then they're like, oh, God, what's wrong with mum? I'm going back to my room. It's a case of just making yourself available and saying, hey, or I often just, if I'm cooking something, I'll just put something in front of them. In other words, hey, I love having you here, but I'm not going to say anything. I'll put a bit of that food in front of them to keep them there, but I won't give them a job or I won't bombard them with stuff. And so often they will fill that space with some pretty amazing stuff because it's safe for them and they'll come out more. So just try that little experiment at home. It's a good one. But yeah, this one as well. To understand, or am I listening to respond, is asking yourself each time you're talking to a young person. So yeah, the ultimate question is, how do I be the person that my young person comes to if they need to? What does that look like? It's going to look different for everybody. And I just want to share with you, a couple of years ago, I went through a pretty yucky time, mental health myself. And it was as much as it was horrible, it was good to be on the other side and realize the power of words of other people. So I want to just share with you how one sentence or one word can really make a difference with someone who might be struggling. And so I'm going to these next slides are really just to really show you. I won't go through them with too much detail. So reframing so this one's actually a little bit different. This is actually sometimes how our young person might express themselves, but actually what they mean. So our job is to recognize that if they say, leave me alone, it's actually really just saying, I'm not ready to talk right now, but check in with me later. It's actually not leave me alone forever. You're the worst is actually, I really don't like you right now, and I'm just trying to express myself. So their words are not necessarily saying exactly what's coming out of their mouths, I guess. And let them sit with them and maybe sometimes say, well, did you really mean that? Or a little bit later when things have settled down. But I'll just share with you this. This was some of the things that I heard when I was not in a great state. And one of them was like, I miss the old you. That was one of the hardest things to hear because it was like, well, bugger that. I'm really struggling right now. And I don't want to be the old you for you. But we say that so often. So I just think that's one that I don't want to hear people saying. I miss you is another one. It's like, well, this isn't about you. And yeah, I miss me as well right now, but it's making about the other person who's talking to you. But so, saying things like, I'm worried for you, but it's not about me, like saying that, letting them know that. You're worrying me. I really loved when someone said to me, I do ugly tears. That was like the best statement. It just gave me permission to do ugly tears because I'm a good ugly tearer. So, yeah, some of those statements are just, and even asking a young person, how are you feeling, is really, really hard because it's really hard to actually put it into words sometimes. And you can say to them saying, actually, it's okay to not know how you're feeling, but it's really obvious that things aren't great for you right now. So it gives them permission to stop having to try and work things out themselves. So I just wanted to sort of share that bit of a personal statements that I heard in my time and just thought, yeah, they're tough. So we do say these. They're our default statements often. And this is only me and it might be different for other people, but I just think it's something to just be a little bit aware of. Some of the other ones I just wanted to put up there is some of the other really nice sort of empathetic ways of saying things. So I won't read them out. I'll just let you have a quick look at them. And I just realised I didn't put the handouts. So I'll leave you. So another one here, just reframing our words. I won't go too much into this one. And this little beautiful diagram here just explains that power of connection, that connection doesn't have to be immediate. We can pause and come back to it and show up again. And it's often much more powerful than showing up at the time. So this other parenting strategy is, I just love this one here. That's if you've been to these talks before, I always bring this one up. Is this strategy of sacking ourselves as managers. So if you think about us as parents, up to when our kids are teenagers, we have been managing everything. We manage their time, we manage what they wear, we manage when we pick them up, we manage what they eat, we manage everything, and we are absolutely incredible managers. But there's this saying with teens and tweens, that, and we're correcting and we're directing. Let's look at it that way. That's what we're doing just by default with our young people, because that's what they need. But there's a saying when they come to tweens or teens that the more we correct or direct, the more we disconnect. And you think about it, if you think about the number of times you might have said something to your kid, and I've seen this, they just shut down as soon as you try and correct them or direct them into something. So there's this great little parenting strategy where we re-employ ourselves, we sack ourselves as managers and we re-employ ourselves as coaches. And when you think about coaches, it's the suits off, it's the tracky pants on. We're much more casual and we're asking over telling. We're on the sideline. We're just saying, hey, what do you need me to do to help you get there? Or what can you do to be able to achieve that? Or what can you do to help with whatever's going on now, even if it's with your emotions? And what can I do to support you? So we're not directing and correcting anymore. We're sort of overseeing and supporting as coaches rather than managers. So I love that parenting strategy. And I don't know whether it's a good thing to tell your kids, but I sometimes think it is, because then your kids can pull you up and say, Mum, you're being a manager now, or Dad, you're being a manager now. And you go, yeah, you want me to be a coach right now. So sometimes it's good and sometimes you don't want them to know that you're doing it. So you can make the PYB, so the pick your battles. So I learned this one again through parenting more so than anything else. I think that we can't take on all the battles of our teenagers. They're too big. There's too many of them. And there's a list of them up there. So it is picking what battles are most important and most important to your young person. And one of my battles, which I think was the best one that I ever gave up, was the grotty bedroom. Not the grotty, the messy. Grotty, there's a limit to grotty, but messy bedroom. It's like I am going to be battling until my kids leave home if I keep going on about the bedroom. Is it achieving anything right now? And it actually, when I stopped that battle and I just said to my kids, the line is grottiness. No, if there's any food in there, if there's anything like that in there, that's when we've got to do something. Other than that, the room's your own, but I'm not coming in. I'm not cleaning it up. So it made a huge difference in our household when we just stopped some of those battles that we were trying to get through. And they're all fine, happy adults now with still messy bedrooms, and that's okay. It's their bedrooms. Then we've got the feel it to heal it, name it to tame it, and share it to bear it strategy. And that's a really nice one as well. Sometimes if we can just pay attention to how we're feeling, what we're feeling in the body. And then when we've actually done that, looking at and going, oh, I actually feel this here, and this is what my muscles are doing, and get them to connect to themselves. Then it might be then looking at sharing that feeling, and then we can help to tame it. Then we might be able to work with it. But it's actually sitting in that space initially. This tool here, I think, is one of the best tools, again, that I found throughout looking for teenagers, is if you've got something that your young person's struggling with, this tool really helps them it helps me actually, it helps them, helps all of us to put it into perspective. So it's looking at what is the problem, what is the thing that is the issue right now, putting in a circle what is in my control and what is out of my control. So first of all, what's out of my control? So it might be whatever the situation is, friends are out of my control, how people react is out of my control. But what is in my control, if it's something to do with friendships, for example, is how kind I am, what I do to look after myself. And often when we do use this tool, and there's examples of it somewhere up there, is that when life is feeling completely out of control, remember those emotions are really big, even if it's a smaller problem, when we can put it into a circle and say, there's the problem, and here's all the things that are out of my control, but my goodness me, look at all the things that I actually can do. And it actually really helps you to see, that there are things that they can concentrate on the things that are in their control. And you could do some sort of meditation or something to actually get rid of those things that are out of their control. And so you don't have to think about them anymore because they're just been given the time, so I'm hurrying up. Is what is in your toolbox, and you'd be quite surprised what you've actually already got. So your eyes. So your eyes are there. They send signals of caring. They send signals of safety, and they're also there for you to observe their body language, their language, and them to observe yours. So our eyes are really powerful tools. Our voices are also incredibly powerful tools. So keeping them slow, keeping them calm, send signals of safety, which will bring down those big chemicals that are running through. Making our body smaller, coming to their level, sitting in a space that is safe for our young person, all signals of safety. your heart. So the rupture and repair method, hopefully you've probably heard about that one, where we can admit we don't handle things well and we admit it. We do the rupture, then we do the repair and we move on. Time. So it's never, our teenagers are never going to be on our time zone. They're always going to be late at night. There always going to be times when I want to be in bed, but it's kind of trying to work out how do we work with their times as well. What do we might need to do? And that is things like sitting in your lounge room, for example, and putting your phone or whatever aside and just being. So you're available, making yourself available at other times. One of the things that I did with my kids, just to sort of get the times right, is sometimes if I was working out in the garden or something, you're never allowed to tell my kids this, but I used to find a job that I couldn't do. So it'd be like, oh, I really need to, and I'd call them and say, can you help me? I've just got to hold this post up and do whatever I was doing. I didn't actually really need anyone to hold the post, but it was getting them out to connect with me and be with me. And then if there was a time there they wanted to use while we're out doing something, they were still being useful to me. So it was kind of like try and find, you can try and sort of find little things that might be able to create that time for you. Brain breaks are also really good. Like it is things like, how do I change those chemicals before I deal with something? So is that going to the park and kicking the footy around? Is that going for a walk with the dog? Is that doing something to just break the cycle of whatever's going on? Their body's a tool, so using whatever they might need to, breathing exercises, shaking it all out, exercise, whatever that means, it's a really good tool to use. And that sort of breaking it down, but sometimes words are really hard, so numbers might be easier to work with. So where are you on a scale of 1 to 10 now with whatever we're feeling? And where do we want to get to right now? Let's use that. Or what do we need to do to get you to this number? And then when we get to that number, what might we need to do to get you to the next number? So sometimes numbers are easier to work with. Beautiful. See what I need to just jump over. Yeah. Jump over. Nights where you can just have no agenda, be with your young people, if and when it's available to you. The magic of just being outside and just having dinner outside makes it a little different. So it's also looking at what you can do, favourite foods, game nights, things like that. Set the setting. This one here is really looking at what is your superpower in parenting. Everyone's got a superpower. We've all got a number of them, but working out what it is. And if that is a good cop, bad cop, in family dynamics, and that's a really good thing to have. But is like, for example, my partner's, it's like he's the calm one, and if I need a calm person in there, he needs to go in on that one, and then I might be the problem solver. So what's your superpower, and tap into those. Another one that from the mouths of teenagers, of things that they could do if they're not ready to talk. One of the great things I thought with a couple of teenagers I've talked to is like, we'd love to just put like a ribbon on the door. So we don't have to say when we're ready to talk, but we can just have the ribbon on the door that tells my parents I'm ready to talk now. Or a magnet on the fridge I can turn upside down or something like that. So I don't have to say it, but come and talk to me now. So no words. This is a very important one, and I am so guilty of almost doing this so many times, but what we don't know is what our kids hear. So I know the number of times that I've walked, something's gone on and I've just walked away and gone, oh, no, I'm not happy with that. And that signal to my young person is mum's just given up on me. That's the worst feeling in the world. So I've so many times ducked back in and said, I'm disappointed in you right now. Doesn't mean I love you any less, but I am disappointed. I need a bit of time. I haven't given up on you, but walk away. So it's kind of like, don't just walk away because that's I've just given up on you. And that's just that from young people. They did a big survey, and that was one of the biggest things. If anyone feels they've given up on them, makes it a lot harder for them. just I'm going to finish up on this one here, but really, as we all know, this one, we need to keep our batteries filled. We need to look after ourselves to be able to look after our young people. Really super, super hard, but asking yourself, how do I charge my battery? How do I be in this space? Because my young person does deserve that. And I put the little dog in there because I always say, all else fails, get a dog, because dogs will always love you. And no matter what you do, they'll always greet you with a wagging tail. So that's it. I'm sorry I rushed the end, but I know these guys had to get out early tonight. Hopefully that has given you some tools to put in your toolbox, work with. If you do need any resources, just put your email on a bit of paper for me and I can always send you the PowerPoint, or even on the back, put it on your feedback form actually, and then I can always email you. And if you ever do need resources or you do need help, we have family services in Dhelkaya Health who might be able to help with the bigger picture of things. But yeah, just email me if you ever need any resources or anything. I've got lots. Yeah, you're welcome.